Hello, everyone. I'm Father Alexander Har,
And I'm the Reverend David Marshall.
and this is A Bridge Between, where we are bridging the theological, the philosophical, and that part of my brain that actually understands it, the physical distance in our friendship, and of course, as always, all of the other parts that come with being a human being and a priest.
And a priest. And talking about a gospel, which thankfully we're back to Mark. That's great.
Yeah, I'm really
So
happy about that.
that's
I
a good
love
thing.
our journey through John was eventful, but we're back now in Mark, which is helpful. And the thing I like about it with the lectionary writers is I think they did a good job in talking about how um, the epistle and the gospel are related to one another.
I see.
Um,
Well, okay, but no, here's the thing. James has a gigantic, and target's not the right word, that what James is writing about can be expanded. And so, Linda, what we're talking about is that we have switched from Ephesians into the letter of James. And
mhm.
so when we refer to James, it might sound like he's a friend of ours, but he's actually a guy who wrote a letter.
Well, I know a guy named Santiago, and that's Saint James.
Okay.
Tiago
Okay.
means James, San means saint. So there,
Ah, I did not know that.
there you go.
Wow. The learning has already, the bridging has already begun.
Already started. Already started.
Wow, that's exciting.
So let's go with the gospel first,
Okay.
because there's some questions about this. So the essence of this gospel is,
Essence?
no pun intended. We talked about essence before the show started. Is that the Pharisees see the disciples eating with defiled hands, meaning they had not washed their hands in a certain particular way, observing the traditions of the elders. And Jesus is saying and quoting here, this people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandments of God and hold to human tradition. In other words, Jesus says, you hypocrite. It's not what you are, it's not what is coming out of the body, or it's not what you do to your body that defiles you in this way. It is what is coming out of your body, the idea of adultery and fornication and theft and murder and wickedness and deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, and folly. So that's just a good list.
Is that how fast you're going to read it on Sunday?
Yes, that's exactly.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
and I'm going to
Yeah.
go right past the word fornication and just keep going.
Yeah.
No, I will use a hard R on fornication. Yeah.
A
Um,
hard R on avarice. Is that the R?
and
You're going to,
pride, exactly. So,
right. You're going to nail avarice.
Jesus is pointing out that these things that come from the heart and originate from the heart are what defile us, that would make us unclean. And of course, this is flying in the face of the traditions in which Jesus is speaking, where the dietary restrictions and the dietary traditions, which many people thought were very necessary, they just followed them so intently
Mm-hmm.
that it became almost a god.
It did. And well, if I can jump to the good news, because
Mhm.
Alex and I might do some massive we might go on some tangents here. So the good news is people can't make you defiled. They can't defile you. Only you can defile yourself. And
And
it's not what people can do to you, what they can put in you, that type of stuff that defiles. It's what comes out of you that defiles. So the good news is you can walk around undefiled. And back in those days, a number of things could happen, especially to women,
Mhm.
where that against their own choice. And so what Jesus is saying is, what defiles you is what comes out of you. There's some really good news there. If people can't wash their hands, ritually speaking,
Mhm.
and then they eat with unwashed hands, they're not defiling themselves. What comes out is, the wickedness. That's what defiles.
And I think it's important to point out, you said that the things that happen against our will, and I think that's very, very important. But it's also important that Jesus cares about what we do with our bodies.
He does, right?
Jesus says that what we do with our bodies and how we choose to use our bodies to either exploit a person or allow ourselves to be exploited, to choose willingly to do those things, it does matter. And this is kind of like my partial soapbox that I don't always get a chance to necessarily talk
No, no,
about.
fully soapbox it.
Fully soapbox it, okay,
Yeah,
is
I'm
that
going to sit back and enjoy this.
we live, I think, in a society, especially in telling our young people that what we do with our bodies doesn't matter. I'm thinking of the things that we put in our bodies, various substances that may either be illegal or illegal. The
I thought you were
amount,
talking about Slurpees, but
well, now Slurpees are legal. I don't know how many of them you should put in your body,
see,
but
right. How about drinking soda, which I like doing?
right. But I'm
Yeah.
thinking more for our young people, things like drugs and alcohol, just to be blunt.
Oh, okay.
And I'm
How about
also thinking
not? Yeah.
of the sexualization of our children in
Okay.
the sense of younger and younger, we see children engaging in sex. And that's a very scary thought, not just as a parent, but just recognizing that a person should be mature and ready to engage in that kind of relationship. And that's not always happening. And I'm not calling anybody defiled, but what I'm saying is that if we're not careful, we can fall into these places where we dishonor God's creation, which is us.
All right. Is there any more of that soapbox?
No, that's good. So I want you to get your take on this particular gospel before we segue into James, which has something to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to make it to James.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
see. Poor
We'll
guy. No,
see.
we're gonna have his letter for quite a while. So we'll see. And but had a breakfast. I meet monthly, at least sometimes twice a month, with the senior pastor at the Presbyterian Church here on the island. Her name's Julia, and she and I were talking about essence and existence. And then I brought that up with you, Alex, and that I think that more than the hypocrites, more than hypocritical stance, if you will, in this gospel lesson, that Jesus is talking about essence, and the Pharisee scribes are talking about existence. And so, if I can put some framework onto what in the world that means,
Hmm.
essence is eternal.
Yeah.
So essence is ongoing. And when we have a funeral and we remember somebody that we love, we don't talk about their existence, their physical existence, which is finite. We
Hmm.
talk about their essence of what made them a person and what that person had an impact in the community and us personally. That essence, and that God is essence, and that somewhere along the line, God decided to make existence, to make something physical, knowing that it all has expiration dates to it, and that then along the lines, God decided to become existence with the birth of Jesus. That then essence becomes existence and lives and also has to die. And so that God then, the essence experienced the existence, but the essence never dies. So existence was reborn or um,
So
came back to life.
what we'll do is we'll just encourage people to rewind and listen to that a few times, because that's what I'm going to have to do when I'm editing this to make sure that I got exactly what you were saying, because it makes sense. I mean, even in our own theology as Christians, we understand that we have a physical body that is temporal,
Yeah.
right? It exists in space and time in these dimensions. And one day that body will grow sick or grow old or will have an accident or something, and
Mhm.
the body will cease to contain life within it.
Yes.
And that's
But the essence
the essence
continues.
of what lives on. I think
Yes.
the what I would point out is we are also, if we're not careful as the church, as society, as human beings, we can also be obsessed with the physical,
With existence.
with it. Well, not just existence, but with the physical nature of our existence. And what I mean by that, hold
All
on,
right, because I'm trying. Before you go on, if you don't mind, I'm trying to say that existence is physical, essence is eternal, right? So,
I agree.
and so we can't say physical existence; it's just existence.
Well, what I mean is the outer layer, what people see, we become obsessed with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is we all have a physical existence, right? But I think if we're not careful, we can become obsessed with the outer nature of us as as individuals. And this is
Mhm.
seen a lot in just our obsession with being young, our obsession with being beautiful, and those types of things. And that's a whole other discussion. But
But it also ties into this.
yeah, yeah.
Because we get focused on existence, and the religious leaders were focused on the existence of existing laws. You're supposed to wash your hands, and they get really tied up about the way that you wash cups and pots and bronze kettle. That they get really wrapped up in that type of existence stuff. And Jesus is over here talking about essence, and the essence of you is good, but you can have evil things come out, and that's what defiles your essence.
And do you think that's an issue of control? Because for the Pharisees, they can control what they wash, they can control what they clean, and they can control people by the things that happen to them. They can't control a person's essence.
Well, no. And when I think the other good news is that Jesus is talking about you're responsible for your own essence. You're responsible for this, and that they can't. They're going to try, but they can't affect your essence. The thing that bothers me so much about drugs, illegal drugs, is that it can. I've seen it change who the person essentially is.
Mm.
And now it's completely physical, because drugs are operating on that type of physical existence. But what if they're making choices and things that end up defiling who they are, their essence, because of the undue influence of drugs?
I think you've hit a very, what I would call an intersectional note in that. Because when we think about the addiction that a person experiences with a particular substance or action that they cannot let go of, that has a real grip on them,
Hmm.
there is something that is existence. It exists in their mind. There are chemicals at play.
Yep.
There's actual addiction, but also there is the behavior that they are choosing and in losing their freedom to, which is part of their essence. And I think that's the insidious part of these addictions is not just the physical degradation that could occur within a person, but that you see how it affects their soul.
Hmm. You do, and it's that's the part that worries me. So we started with the good news, and now it seems like we're heading into the bad news. But
No,
um,
I would say the good news though is that there is never a place to which you can fall in your essence that Christ himself cannot bring you out of. That's the good news.
Yeah, that's a very good news, and that would also indicate that our essence is malleable or flexible. That there are ways of like we before we hit record. Alex had said, "But what about the saints? Are the saints in existence?" And no, their bodies are no longer in existence. The ones that are in heaven, but the essence of what they were accomplishing remains with us, and that is something that we then strive to do, that we try to embody our essence through our existence of what they did.
So what I like about this is, and I want to just take a slightly different tangent, is that Jesus has this habit of somebody bringing him something like, do it this way, or what about
Hmm.
this particular law? And he takes it to a much higher degree. Because, for example, if I'm talking about listening to Jesus who says, somebody who comes to me and says, well, you should follow this commandment.
Hmm.
Well, according to Jesus, I should really follow it even more deeply than what you've explained. And so I think if I were to kind of hear what Jesus is saying as he talks to these Pharisees, like, you're worried about the outer part, this existence part, about washing hands. Washing hands are important,
It is.
but the essence of cleanliness is that it is next to godliness, you might say.
There
Um,
you go.
and that if we're
So
going to preach this gospel, sorry, if we're going to preach this gospel, it's telling people you still need to follow the commandments. You should still wash your hands, please. But
yeah.
remember that Christ is calling you to an even higher place of observing what happens to your essence.
So along the essence and existence line, we need to talk about sin.
Mm.
Existence, we rely on ourselves and on each other's for a material existence. But in the world of essence, all that's there, and I shouldn't say all that's there, that what we can conceive of in essence is simply relationship. that you no longer have physical needs. So what we are is in with essence is relationship and love and joy and peace and harmony with one another. Sin is simply a damaging of that relationship, both in existence and in essence.
I would say that sin is choosing voluntarily with full knowledge an action that I know will damage my relationship.
Okay, so for theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, that there are intentional damaging of relationship.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's why when we talk about addiction, we have to be very careful about talking about addiction and sin in the same sentence, because there
Oh,
are
right.
instances where a person has completely lost their freedom
Yeah.
to this. And so the ability to make a decision can in some ways be compromised. It's not an excuse, it's just understanding that that can happen in addiction. But
Hmm.
when I think about some of the things that Jesus lists here, they don't happen by accident, they happen by choice.
Yeah. So one of the veterans that I was working with at the Homeless Veterans Rehabilitation Program, the VA, is he looked at me and said, "Man, I have drank through every relationship I've ever had."
Mm,
That's how he was coming to grips with his own stuff. He was addicted to it, obviously, but he drank through it. He was continually choosing the path of alcohol. And so, if in essence and existence, if sin is the separation of relationship, then the alcohol was the sin or the thing that broke those relationships. And he would say it was his choice to finally get clean and get sober so that he could then start to have relationships again.
and I love that imagery. One of the things I will say during Lent or in the context of a Lenten class is that on some level, we're all addicted to some kind of sin. We keep doing it. We keep going back to that comfortable sin, um, because we're tempted and it is enticing.
So,
And
what sin would that be that then damages a relationship?
well, what I say, and this is like I said, it's using a word in more than one instance.
Hmm.
But when I think of maybe not being able to let go of a particular sin, knowing that it is wrong and still coming back to it, it's asking God to help us with our freedom. We think of all of the people who face all manner of challenges in their spiritual lives. Let's just take gossip or slander, for
Right.
example,
Yeah.
right? Over the next couple of months, just don't even go online. I mean, people are
Or
going to be
turn on the TV.
slandering, or turn on the TV. People are just going to be slandering one another. People are going to be hurting one another, gossiping about one another, and all, in such a way that it is so damaging to relationships. People will cease to be family and friends because of this, of what's going on politically over the next couple of months. We have a choice, though, about whether or not to allow that to plant and be planted within our hearts.
I thought you were talking about Ben and Jen.
What?
Never mind. Ben Affleck is and Jennifer Lopez getting
Oh,
it. Yeah.
really?
Yeah. I know. I thought you were maybe going there. And uh, and the woman who I adore, who I'm married to, she pulled up the news on her tablet and she let out a big sigh. And I didn't think that she knew Ben or Jen. It was that wrapped up. The sigh, the sigh was how high up in the news feed that story came. It was above what is happening in
Finally,
Ukraine
something
and
broke.
Russia,
Yeah,
right?
finally something broke that changed the narrative. So, look,
Right.
kind of coming back to ground level as we get to the last part of our segment. When I think
Wait,
about,
before wait,
sorry,
one thing.
go ahead.
We have to talk about grace. If we're talking about sin, we have to talk about grace.
Oh, cool.
Grace is not in existence; it's an essence, and it's that thing that can reunite. It's the part that can bring things back. So somebody involved in envy and slander and pride and folly. and that type of damaging relationships that grace is this unearned essence that shows up and that can pull things back in. And so you have essence, you have existence, you have sin, and you have grace. You have this really interesting dance
Dynamic.
going on of
And
both
and
physical and eternal.
I would say grace is how God reaches down and touches our essence. I mean, our existence.
Or existing. There you go.
You
Yes.
see?
Now you're on it.
Because
Yes.
for example, in the sacraments, we receive grace through these outward signs and symbols. Yeah, I can get on there. See, I can get on.
You're there, man.
Yeah.
Yes. That
Um,
it is the outward and for the invisible, right? It's the essence. And all of the sacraments are about reuniting. It's all about the grace of pulling back together.
exactly. So if I'm preaching on this this Sunday, and I actually might be doing a children's sermon. I don't know yet. But if I'm preaching on this Sunday, I'm realizing that a lot of this episode has been way high and very in the deep end of the pool.
Okay.
What I want to bring it back to is something I think very simple. Jesus calls us, and this goes back to James, who says, be doers of the word and not just hearers
Uh,
of the word. Did I take your line?
no, it's just yeah, we have 7 minutes left, and that's like, oh,
I'm
you're
just
gonna bring
touching on
James
it.
up
I'm
now.
just touching on it. They can read it on their own. But what I would say is that as Christians we're called to just, as we would say, walk the walk. Um, it's one thing to sit in the pew every Sunday and listen to these words read and listen to a sermon be preached. It's quite another to let it sink in. And I think that is hard because our hearts can be so hardened. At the Water and the Word conference, I was asked to give a reflection, and I asked the bishop and asked, because I was serving as a chaplain, said, what do you want me to talk about? And they said, well, something about the theme of, getting it to sink in. And one of the questions I asked of the group in the reflection was, are you a rock or a sponge? Rocks don't absorb water. It just goes around them. It wears them down. What?
No, keep going.
Sponges absorb.
Yes.
Sponges absorb. So what rocks, Dave, absorb water? Go ahead.
Again, we don't have enough time for me to get into porous rocks and all that type of stuff.
Oh my
But
gosh.
what rocks float? Yeah, there are rocks that can float too. So yes.
You're just going to leave me hanging. Okay. But yeah, but that's what I'm saying is just to kind of ask yourself and challenge your congregation to ask that question. Am I receiving and absorbing God's grace, or am I hardened to it? Am I being a doer of the word, or just a hearer of the word? And I will give
Okay.
you the last 6 minutes of our episode.
You want me to dive right in? Okay. So with the essence, I'm trying to figure a way to bring this down into a way that we would understand.
Mhm.
There is a part of you that is eternal, and there is a large part that most of our day is spent taking care of that is finite. It has an expiration date. And that for those things that have expiration dates, we get wrapped up in maintaining and caring for that, where Jesus, who is the essence, has come down to remind us of our own essence and that we are created good. We are created for kindness and for love and for virtue and for service, that we are created for those things. Um, and that if you're looking for more happiness, look for more love, because we are grounded and rooted in that type of relationship. At the same time, the essence had to become existence in order to be a shepherd, if you will, to lead us into where we need to go. And so it's not that rules are bad. And it's not that you shouldn't wash your hands or you shouldn't wash a kettle or a cup. That's not Jesus's point. The point is that it gets really ethereal, and so it's hard for me to try to again. And this is something that I'm just currently working on. I don't have any
Yeah,
good answers to it.
I think the way that I would kind of sum it up is to recognize the dynamic nature of our creation, that God has created something that exists in a way that we can see, but there's also something that is essential to us that we get to show and that others can see as we reveal it to them. That's why love in relationships, either romantic or friendly or whatever, are
Hmm.
so powerful,
Hmm.
because we get to see the essence of another human being
Yes.
when we serve them, when they serve us. And so maybe what we should be talking about is, um, can we make an effort to truly show others who we are, to show not what defiles,
Hmm.
but what reconciles and what gives life.
Yes. Yes. Not what defiles, but what reconciles. That will preach. You just did it, Alex. I'm giving you a virtual high
Ooh,
five.
thank
Yes, you
you.
did
All
it.
right.
Yeah,
Woo!
that's fantastic.
3 minutes to
Um,
spare.
yeah, you told me a beautiful story about one of your children, and that you saw him and you knew something was not right.
Yeah.
And that is not the existence, that's the essence. You could tap into, you just knew. You also know with your pets, if your pets are up or down, you just have a sense, like, and the lights can be off, and one of your loved ones can walk into a room where you can't see them that well, but you know if they are up or you know if they are down. That's the essence, and it's something that transcends our existence. And so, um, so my point on this is to focus on the essence of others, to not get caught up in the rules of, did they wash it right, or they looking this particular way, but to focus on the eternal, to focus on the essence of one another, of the God that's within each person.
I love it. I love it. And so, I just want to say for the record that I appreciate your both your essence and your existence, um, and that it is wonderful to share in this ministry with your essence.
Well, thank you, Alex, and it's your essence. We don't get together. We don't exist enough in person, and I'm really disappointed we didn't get out on the boat more this summer. But the summer's really hot, so what am I saying? It's going to be beautiful in January when we're out on the boat, and it'll be it'll be
Amen.
fantastic.
Well, everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to give your questions to us, and to you preachers and hearers of the word out there. Good luck and enjoy this Sunday. We'll catch you in the next one.
God bless.